And for those of you who have been part of the Ocasi member family for a long, long time, you know this woman who I'm going to introduce. Let me start off with another apology. In your program, we called her the Executive Director of the Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, which is a place she was for many, many years. She's actually the Executive Director of the South Asian Legal Clinic, Ontario nowadays, but habits die hard. Uzma Shakir is a community-based researcher, advocate, and activist. She has been the Executive Director of CASA for approximately 8 years, and for the last 3 years, the Executive Director of SALCO. Uzma has 2 bachelor's degrees, one in English literature from the Karachi University, Pakistan, and the other in international relations from the Sussex University in England. She got a master's degree in international law and diplomacy from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at the Tufts University here in the US in Massachusetts. Recently, her work was focused on fighting against hate crimes, racial profiling, and the erosion of civil liberties of South Asians, Muslims, and Arabs. Organizing immigrant skilled workers around issues of access to different professions and trades, providing legal educational services to low-income and vulnerable South Asians, building innovative and unique coalitions with other ethno-racial communities to produce and document alternative practice and knowledge, youth engagement, and conducting community dialogue on parenting, civic engagement, rights, and obligations. And I must say, as the president of Ocasi for 4 years, Uzma, I believe, single-handedly put on the national agenda the role of smaller urban centers in Canada and their responsibility to the settlement and integration of immigrants and refugees. Please join me in welcoming Uzma Shakir.
This is great. I have nobody to compete with, which means I have your undivided attention for the entire plenary. So if you want to make your telephone calls, do so now. I was asked to come and speak today about inclusion, exclusion, etc., etc., and I believe there's a paper of mine in your package which you may thoroughly disagree with. You're free to do so. It never seems to bother me if you disagree with me. But what I would like to point out right now is that I've been involved in the immigrant sector, so to speak, for the past 15 years. And what depresses me is that we work so hard, we fight so hard, and nothing ever changes. Now, I know you were very positive and very hopeful, and I intend to be very positive and hopeful too. And I intend to be, I'm very professional about it too. But the problem that arises is that we end up on the front lines delivering services as if, you know, that's the only aim in life. The problem, if people were coming in and they had initial problems of settlement, in the sense that they didn't know where to go, get information or whatever, we can do that. But we are so used to taking care of people's pain that we forget that once we have taken that individual person's pain, we haven't really changed the society in which that pain was created in the first place. And that's the dilemma that we face. That's the dilemma that we face as activists. That's the dilemma that we face as immigrant workers. That's the dilemma we face as executive directors. And that's the dilemma that we face as policymakers. Because we have assumed, and this is so Canadian. I mean, it reminds me of, we're such a kinder, gentler world, right? Like, the moment anybody criticizes Canada, everybody says, yeah, but France is so much worse. That's true. That's very true. Yeah, so that means we must be better. Yeah, because Britain is so much worse. Yeah, we must be really good then, because Germans are so much better, worse than us. somebody else is worse than us doesn't necessarily make us the better people. Because we are not, right now the issue is not whether we can compete with the rest of the world in terms of levels of bigotry. Because that's what we are implying when we say we are better than Germany and Britain, and we have multiculturalism and they don't, and they want, to put all the Muslims behind bars and use them as a proxy for their bigotry. Therefore, we must be better because we have multiculturalism. No, this is like a race to the bottom. We have to elevate our discourse to a level where we start talking about empowerment and equity and justice in a meaningful manner. And we can't do that if we sit on this land and continue to ignore Aboriginal reality. That's the biggest contradiction of our entire settlement process. That we are settling newcomers to a land that in itself has been settled by colonial forces. And we never want to talk about the Aboriginal people's right to this land and Aboriginal people's right to their sovereignty on this land. So you and I, Johnny-come-latelys, are making it even harder for Aboriginal people to actually seek equity in this world, particularly in Canada. The other problem is that we deal with issues of social inclusion, multiculturalism, etc., as if these were non-problematic terms. Now think about multiculturalism. We seem to have a monopoly over multiculturalism. Canada has invented multiculturalism. Nobody else would have ever thought of multiculturalism had Canada not come up with it, right? My God, you skeptical lot. We have a monopoly over the term multiculturalism. But you know the term multiculturalism that we seem to have a monopoly over is a very interestingly contradictory term. We've reached a point in our history now that if me, as an immigrant and a racialized immigrant, starts to question multiculturalism, another immigrant is likely to turn around and say, please don't do that, otherwise they'll send us on the first boat back home. Because multiculturalism has become like a little life vest for us. Because if Canada doesn't even talk about multiculturalism, then what's going to happen to us? And that's a very sad state of affairs, because for you and me, we may be immigrants, but our children are not. Our children are Canadian-born children. For them, the very fact that we are scared to give up on multiculturalism and scared to even talk about the contradictions of multiculturalism is a very dangerous phenomenon. Because we are pitting them into a future which is highly contentious. And let me give you an example of what I mean by multiculturalism being problematic. When we talk multiculturalism, we are actually talking culture. Actually. You are free to celebrate your culture. What I call the sari samosa syndrome. What I call the song and dance syndrome. You can sing, you can dance, you can eat your samosas, wear your saris, but that's about it. So when it's Caravana, we like multiculturalism. But when it's about equity, when it's about justice, when it's about equal access to opportunities, then it's about, you're an immigrant, struggle. All immigrants struggle. The beauty of that concept is that, have you noticed over a period of time, who are the people who never quite achieve that equity and justice are all people of color. Which I find really peculiar, because if it was such an immigrant phenomenon, why is it that race is such a marker of marginality? And it's not because of immigrants. Aboriginal people are still poor. Indigenous black people are still poor. Chinese and South Asians who've been here for 150 years to 200 years are still poor. So the point still remains that there is something happening in the state of Denmark that is not quite kosher. Sorry for mixing up my metaphors. I mean, of course, I could say that there's something in the state of Denmark that's rotting, but I mean, you know what I mean. There is something going on in the state of Canada that is not quite what it appears to be. And look at the contradiction of culture. Tell me, what is the greatest marker of cultural continuity?